Hello again, and welcome back. Now, you may have watched my ED making of video from Mass Effect, and of course, with that cosplay, there was, in fact, a prop. And I scrolled a long list of possible props I could make, because Mass Effect is one of those games where your character doesn't necessarily have a signature weapon type, maybe. Listen, I've never played Mass Effect, but as I might have mentioned in the ED video, it was meant to be for a group cosplay that I never ended up being a part of because of the pandemic and all of that. Anyways, in said massive list of props, I ended up narrowing it down to about 2 or 3 SMGs, and I ended up going with the Hornet. And this is what our Hornet looks like. And so, of course, this is going to be the subject of today's video. Now, I'll be honest with you when I say that it's been a while since I've actually made this prop, and so while I was editing all the clips from this video, it reminded me of how exactly I put this thing together. Because when I look at it, some of the parts I am not sure how in the heck I put them together. How did I make that? But anyways, those questions do get answered throughout the video. If you're new here, you can take a look at the links down below. I've got a link to my website where you'll get pretty caught up on the type of work I do around here, as well as a link to my Twitch, because I do stream almost every day crafting on projects and cosplays. And as you can see from the last video I made, finally, bloop, we've got the banners back there. We got our new banners, so we don't have any more of the old branding left over in the room. At least I don't think so. There is a sticker on my PC tower, but that can stay there, that's fine. This is one of those builds where I'm gonna need more than one pattern to cut from. It'll avoid needing to piece everything back together or cut off tiny bits that get lost to the ages. Also, it's the best way to check if the scaling is correct, which is very, very important. These props take time to make, and if the scaling is goofy, that's devastating. So let us begin by blocking out the main body of the Hornet. So, off with the weird thing. Off with the clip, off with the grip, but not the long thing. Also, I kept my too small scaled pattern as a notepad for construction order and foam thicknesses. And off with the top section and the barrel. This is going to go and be composed of multiple layers. The bread layers of the sandwich look like this, and I think there were 4mm foam. The 4mm is to accommodate this flap, which will make sense later, and negative space at the front and the whole thing where it should light up, but we're not doing that. The flap just gets cut like this, so it can be pushed inwards a little bit. But that means it needs to have a little chasm to be pushed into. Pretty sure this is 3 layers of 10mm, the 10mm bread being the chasm layers. Oh yeah, that's 10mm. So the body is a total of 38mm. By the way, taking your time to line up your pieces means less cleanup later. And this is said cleanup. I don't know anyone who likes sanding, so minimizing it is in everyone's best interest. Especially areas wider than the sanding drum you're using, it can be a little challenging to get level. I'm peeling the flap back so the edge can be rounded off without hooking the flat areas. This is going to make this seam look intentional and the flow a lot better with the design. I find it's good to round off square edges regardless, even if it's just a real quick pass with a stone bit. These ones just happen to need an actual inner curve. And for anyone who watched my ED making of video, these curved staggered type details are also in the hair. Hair? And because there are similar details following throughout the costume to the prop, it makes them both look like they belong together cohesively. And of course, anywhere the sanding drum passed, my stone bit passes. It smooths out the surface, gets rid of fuzzies, and somewhat seals the surface. Going back a little bit on the subject of cohesiveness, and the fact that this was meant to originally be for group cosplay, in cosplay groups where each member are making their own cosplay, so not one person is making it for everybody, which sounds ridiculous, but I've done it. It's good for the people to shop similar types of fabrics, not necessarily the same fabrics, but similar types, discuss construction techniques, discuss how they plan on aging and weathering things, just that everything kind of matches together, even though one person made one, another person made another, etc., etc. It just makes the group look like it belongs together and it wasn't separate universes colliding. Also, it might be kind of cool to divide tasks based on what each person's strengths are, so that everybody touches a piece of everybody's cosplay as well. That's another great way to make the cohesiveness cohesive. For instance, I tend to have a particular way of aging and weathering my cosplays, so if I were to do a group cosplay, And when I have done group cosplays, like the one I did recently, I made the ghoul, and then my friend Siren Song made Lucy separately. I did some weathering on her fabrics. That way we kind of tie our costumes in together. I didn't do all of her weathering, but I did do some of it. That way there's not too much of a disconnect between weathering styles, because we do have different weathering styles, she and I. I think when it comes to different techniques and people being better at different types of techniques, I think it really does show the most when it comes to paint-related stuff. So base coating, shading, weathering. If you have a very different way of going about it, it's gonna kind of show. Of course, this all kind of has nothing to do with this build anymore. I just thought I would share my thoughts on the subject. And much like the hair, glue is applied halfway just past the curved edge and on the other side. It's a little awkward to glue this halfway down, but patience tends to go a long way. And if you know me, you'd know that I always say patience can be learned. I know this from experience, and I can tell you when I first started making costumes, if there was a corner, it would get cut. So now the bread layers can join the sandwich. For a matter of cleanliness, I always mark where I don't want to glue. And again, very carefully, slowly, the pieces are lined up and pressed together. The contact cement being used here is either Barge or Renia, by the way. The prices went up on Barge where I live, so that might call for a testing contact cements video in the future, maybe? Alrighty, so now more pieces get cut off of the pattern. The weird shape thing is just about next, as well as the... Yeah, I'm looking at the reference for the weird thing right now, wondering what the hell I'm looking at. The other piece that got cut out is a raised area, so 2mm will do the trick, and same for the weird thing, since it'll have to match the total thickness of the front here. So the weird thing layers had to equal about 42mm. I say about, it has to equal 42mm, because originally the body is 38 plus 2mm on each side from that detail piece. 42. Now I could have used 4x10 plus a 2mm, but I didn't. But having these sandwiches in color is going to be super helpful in being able to tell if the sanding job is symmetrical, at least to the naked eye. Leveling it out comes first, though. Yep, that fits nicely. But hey, there are other things that need sanded, so the weird thing can be procrastinated for the time being. You'll see I have lines drawn on my block here that indicate up until where I need to sand a bevel. Super helpful, and of course the black foam connecting to the white serves as the other indicator for my angle. I know, super fascinating stuff, right? Listen, the props are real cool and all, but the process just kind of tends to be a lot of problem solving, some math sometimes, and I really wish I could make it seem more glamorous. Here, sparkles. Ooh, glamorous. The speed at which your rotary tool is set can also make a huge difference, by the way. This stick-shaped stone bit is also great. I love it for straight bevels and wide areas. Definitely worth the investment. You know what isn't boring, though? The blowtorch. This is going to heat seal the opened up pores of the foam that was just sanded and get rid of any leftover fuzzies. Yeah, I skipped getting footage of the weird thing shape. I remember it stressing me out a lot. I wonder what the purpose is of this thing. It looks like sights, but it's underneath. Either way, it's part of the design, so instead of fighting a tiny piece of foam, I'm going to cut a longer bevel, a longer 90 degree, and then cut it to size. Now onto the top shapes. These are mostly going to be hollow, so I'll have to build the shape up as if it's a shell. I swear I've gotten better at making sure I'm in frame. Boop. This is probably the smoothest way of doing this, since sanding this curve would mean more cleanup and might not be as level. Obviously it still needs to be sanded so that the seam disappears, but it's significantly less. Before doing that though, some 2mm raised areas. Also, I lied, this piece is not hollow. And this is less wide than this, so the millimeter of foam used is pretty important. The outer layers with the cutout are 4mm, and that's perfect to have a 2mm piece in that cutout. And maybe this will explain my layer decisions. The chunk is the base, and we need about a 2mm climb to the cutout plate, and then another climb up to the 4mm outer layer that we use. In this area, the initial chunk doesn't go up as high as the outer layers too, and I will show you why. This was experimental, but it worked pretty well. I'm gluing this flush to the curve, and it will get weird, of course. but not as weird as how it was to do the same exact thing on the other side. And of course, like any step that involves gluing, sanding soon follows. These pieces are for the clip. Instead of trying to cut the bevel out at a perfect angle for the end pieces, I'm just cutting them now. And the bottom will wait till later because these pieces aren't staggered for nothing. That other tube thing I was sanding is part of this mess of stuff that goes underneath these new pieces. I really am making this up as I go along. I say this because I've been told that I just kind of look like I know what I'm doing all the time, and to a certain extent I do. A lot of props, armors, sewing projects, etc. tend to have repeat techniques and repeat details. I used to plan my builds when I first started cosplaying on like a list. I'd make a gigantic list with like arrows pointing to the reference image and all of that. I still do a little bit of planning on paper like you saw with the foam thicknesses and just a few little notes here and there, but a lot of my planning nowadays just happens in my head, and also a lot of it kind of just occurs as I'm going. I'll have a general plan of how I'm going to construct something in my head, and then the specifics kind of just come as the time goes, and sometimes the specifics end up changing another general future plan on the list as well. And of course, plans often do change with cosplay. I wanted to do all the small bit details at once, so back to the clip. This is the best way I could interpret creating this shape without stacking more foam. So I'm just cutting into it with a box cutter, and I'll just have to round that off later. And of course the bottom is still just open and breezy. Before you ask, the clip is not removable. I did consider it though. Can't forget our little hollow guy from earlier. The top one has to wait though, since it still needs sanding on a top square that was glued on, and it'll get set aside while quick seal dries. Now the weird quick seal order of business with this prop has to do with the fact that sanding the quick seal in these little crevices once everything is put together, as you can see, would probably be a very horrible time. Very horrible time. Basically, you would need Ant-Man powers in order to really do a good job and be successful at this. So while that dries, a new pattern piece is in order for the little plate thing the barrel connects to. You pretty much know the drill. Oh, and there's supposed to be some stuff in here too, so let's get that done now. This is one of those props that really felt like a skill tree unlock situation. I haven't made that many prop guns, so working on this strange shaped one, it was kind of scary, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and it really feels like I learned something from this project. Oh, by the way, I'm a liar again because the quick seal wasn't done yet, but I meant to. So now that that is actually drying for real, time to build a little IKEA for this thing towards the back. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this, other than it's more of a show and tell type situation. Which I think we should bring show and tell back. World peace, guys. That's the move. That aside, I do like my little IKEA-shaped thing for the back, and now quick seal should be dry enough to sand. This is usually pretty fun to do, though I guess it's only fun when it matches up. But we're not done yet. We still need a grip, and without a grip we can't connect those narrow bits sticking out to anything. 4mm sandwiched by 10mm, sandwiched by 4mm should do the trick here. It might feel awkward and too thick to grip now, but with a bit of sanding it'll get nice and comfy. The top has to be a clean angle though, and so does this inner curve, but the rest can be rounded off. Of course you've seen me do details like this with an X-Acto and a heat gun many times before, and there's so much more where that came from on this main body. When gluing this sort of thing, it's a good idea to, I guess, aim down the sights of the foam, so to speak. The foam sights. I'm really not sure why I chose to glue this now in between heating up the cuts. It would have been weird if I switched the clips. But finally, the sticking out bits can be connected to a base. Fits nice and snug. I really wish I could say there's no more weird shapes to make. No, not the barrel. The barrel is circles mostly. And this thing is just a lot of careful sanding. This piece goes on top of the grip and transitions towards the front. Not this. This is the other weird thing. And I'm not sure anyone can guess where exactly this thing is meant to go. You'll find out soon enough, though. First, these bits need connected. And yeah, it goes here. It could have been done in another step, but the fact that it connects to the grip, I just wanted to do the grip separately, and this was the solution I came up with. Plus, it kind of hides seams. Only a few little bits and pieces left to add. A few cuts open with heat, and the Hornet can finally be quick sealed up and sanded. Then it's off to the spray tent for some Plastidip. Usually about 3 layers since it's expensive here. I already had a white spray paint, but it happened to go on super dusty. And not a good dusty. I told myself I would just sand it and see how it goes. I'd have to sand it anyways. And since I used gray Plastidip, this was actually a happy accident.
We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
Not only did it sand nice and smooth, but in some areas it exposed the gray underneath, taking care of the aging process. All in one go. Plus, it looks super natural since it was left to chance. I'm not going to be doing any masking for this, I'd rather just take this time to practice painting within the lines. There was a time where I thought acrylics didn't come in a variety of thicknesses, and I realized that's a little silly, but using a thinner acrylic and even a little bit watered down helps immensely. That and not using a brush with short bristles. Believe me, you'll have more control over longer ones. Just check out people who do sign painting. Actually, just go watch sign painting videos regardless because it's absolutely mesmerizing. Anyway, a little silver dry brushing on those blacked out parts. This will require masking though. And so will this. A little spongy stipple with an orangey yellow, and I'm removing the masking tape immediately while it's wet. Waiting till it's dry makes me paranoid. A few on-purpose rips in the way of the masking tape too for added aging. The H gets a dark gray. And I'm using a pin to scratch up some of the paint even further. The finish on the gun itself I don't picture fading very easily, but things like decals might be less strong and might withstand less. Of course, all these little cracks and crevices get shaded too with some watered down black acrylic. Without shading like this, all the little details that you worked so hard on are going to vanish into the base coat and be invisible in photos and even in person past a certain distance. And I'm just playing around with some dry brushing, smudging, slowly building it up. And this is the result, with only a few more things left. The back originally was a decal, but yeah, I hated it, so I ended up just using a silver pen and doing it by hand. The spot where the light is meant to be, I just painted and stippled to highlight. Man, it's been a while since I let my hair grow that much. But hey, it's done. And that is how I made it. If you're curious as to see how I make things in real time without any cuts, like I said at the beginning here, I do stream on Twitch. There are links down below if you wanted to check that out. There's also links to the Discord and my website and all of that good stuff down there too. And speaking of the Discord, have you made something from Mass Effect? Have you made a cool prop? Have you made a similar prop to this one? Whatever it might be, if you want to go ahead and share it with us in the Discord, we like looking at cool things. We like looking at people's art in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be cosplay. So, you know, you can come, like, hang out and stuff and talk to people, show them your cool things. So there is a slight thing that bothers me about this. And the thing that bothers me about it, I don't know if you can tell, but I kinda sorta messed up my math over here. You see this angle that's kind of going down here? This should be straight, so I kind of messed up how high to make this piece originally. If it was maybe 2 or 3 millimeters shorter, that would have kind of evened that out and sat it down a lot straighter. But really, it's such a nitpicky detail because I really do love the way this turned out. Oh, and of course, speaking of Twitch, thank you so much to my Twitch subscribers. I do appreciate y'all. Thank you. There's your names on the screen. I do appreciate all of you. And hopefully I will see you guys soon. I hope you guys watch these videos. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, I'm putting everybody's names up here. What if they don't even watch the video? Is your name up here? Let me know. Let me know down there. No, and no, it's not just a plan to bait you into commenting on my video, though that's maybe like 25% the intent behind that statement. But there's a good 75% of the intent behind that statement that is actually just straight up curiosity on my part. Anyways, I'm gonna stop talking now, and I will see you guys in the next one. Finger guns. Oh, they're uneven. Finger guns. Oh. I didn't know that. While editing the video, I didn't know that I put little... The back, the front. I did just smack myself in the face with that.